All right, what's going on, guys? Wanted to do a partisan overview video. I want to preface saying that this is still me learning, but understanding some of the ins and outs. Once again, when I play with Partisan, I'm Tector Hunter, Partisan Wand. But what we're going to do today is really overview Partisan, not worry about the wand skills, even though you might see them on my weapon palette, but really focus on the things that you can do with Partisan, how you need to think about it, so on and so forth. So I have all of the partisan skills. If you look at my skill tree video, which I'll post in the top right corner, kind of goes in depth of what all is going on. So I want to focus on what's going on with partisan, what you can do, what you can't do, what you have to be careful of, so on and so forth. So let's get started. Normal attacks. So let's just display it. So Partisan has 3 normal attack hit string. Very long. We'll do it again. 1, 2, 3. Now, given some of the data, and I'll put this in the description. When we look at frame data, the first normal is about 44 frames. So it's actually pretty fast. The second normal is 51 frames, probably 52. I say probably 52 because I've noticed a pattern to where frames generally tend to be even numbers, not odd. So 1, 2, 52 frames. And that's pretty much as fast as a wand normal, more or less, when I did my frame data way back when. Now, normal 3 is 82 frames. Pretty slow, but there's a trick to this, and this is all about the weapon action. So let's get into this. Once again, I'll do the combo string, and then I'll show you what the weapon action can do for each hit. So let's focus on the first normal attack. 2 strikes, right? I just wanted to move out of the way to stop the second hit. 2 strikes. Now watch when I pair it with the weapon action. When you use the weapon action, you can animation cancel pretty much at any time. So let's do this for the second normal. And let's do this for the third normal. So there is the trick for the partisan normals. While they might seem very long and laborious, you can cancel at any time. So if you're going to be using partisan normals, this is the power of the normals. Now, let's move on to the step attack. You can do the same thing. So any of the normal attacks you can cancel with the weapon action. Next, let's move on to the photon arts. We're going to start with Scythe. Now, in the global version, this might be called Cleave, but Scythe Ripper actually sounds better. This is what you do when you use Scythe without charging it. You just tap it. And it's about 42 frames. Very fast. Now, when we charge it, it has 2 animations, the first slash and then the slash rift explosion. Of course, you can cancel in between those. And I showed you something else, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So let me sidestep it, not to confuse things. So, Scythe Ripper is great for a lot of reasons. You can mob with it because it has great range and AoE. But it's also great when you're fighting bosses because of how fast it is. And you can get out of the way. When you charge it, it's about 158 frames. The second part of the attack is about 103 frames. Now, when we look at damage per second, the first part is stronger. And we'll get into why you want to use the first part. Most of the times, you might want to skip the second part when we move on to the second part of the weapon action. But let's go through the rest of the Photon arts. So the next one we're going to go through is Fatal Tornado. When you tap it, and that's about 118 frames. Now you can cancel this in between the two spin attacks, but you can only cancel it with a step dodge. You can't cancel it with a weapon action. This is very interesting about Fatal Tornado. It can only be canceled with step. You charge it. Charging Fatal Tornado is 194 frames. Now, this is stronger than the normal tap, but of course it's also a little bit longer. With that said, it's not too much stronger than the normal attack. We're looking at a DPS difference of about 30 damage per second. But once again, you can only step dodge with it. So this is a very committal move. We'll get into why you want to be very choosy with this move, because you can only step out of it. It can leave you in very, very dangerous positions because you can only cancel in between the two slashes. The minute you start that second spin, you're locked into it. And so when you think of Scythe, it's faster, doesn't leave you as vulnerable, you can time it better, and you can get out of things. Not only with step dodge, but with also your weapon action or wand parry. And so when you see me do wand and partisan, I generally replace the weapon action for partisan with the wand weapon action, which is wand parry. Now the next move is stab or thrusting javelin. Here we go. That's when you tap it. That's about 78 frames and gives you about 300 damage per second. So if you look at of the tap moves, this is your strongest move. And of course, if you were to hold it, and you can hold it indefinitely, you can hold it as long as you have PP. And it's about, let's say, 594 frames if you were to hold it starting at 100 PP, giving you about 321 DPS, which is roughly the equivalent of Scythe Ripper. The added benefit is that, you know, if you have the PP to spare, Javelin is going to be great. Now let's get on to Assault Buster before we kind of move into how we want to think about things as they relate to the hunter skills for Partisan. So, Assault Buster. How does this work? Well, after you do a Partisan Photon Art, you can follow up with the weapon action at specific times to do Assault Buster. And it's pretty lenient. You can pretty much mash the button and get it out. So I'll show you with Scythe. And there it is. That's the Assault Buster. It costs an additional 10 PP after doing the Photon Art. You can also charge this. As you notice, much more powerful, but also doesn't travel as far. When we look at Assault Charge, just when you tap it, it's about 28 frames. And that gives you about 257 DPS. When you hold it, it's about 77 frames, and it gives you 374 damage per second when you take the frames and the power it has and do that formula. So this is where things get interesting. I would say Assault Buster is definitely going to be your bread and butter combo finisher. If you saw my combo video, my little short, you'll notice that I do things like Javelin into Assault Buster, or now here's the thing with Fatal Tornado. You can't cancel into Assault Buster until you complete the entire PA. So that's another thing why this thing gets a little tricky in Fatal Tornado use. But if we do Ripper, This is most likely your most powerful combo. Charge Ripper, cancel it into Charged Assault Buster. From a DPS standpoint, that is ideal. Now, if you're in the specific situations you're using Javelin, where the enemy is not moving a lot or not attacking a lot, or they're downed, this is great. So the reason why I recommend Scythe Ripper into Assault Buster is because of Photon Art Avenge. Once again, Photon Art Avenge, and I guess also when you pair it with Perfect Hunter Parry, when you release a Photon Art right when you're about to get hit, you will parry the frames and trigger Photon Art Avenge. What Photon Art Avenge does is that it gives additional 50% power to that Photon Art. Assault Buster also has a skill, Assault Buster or Assault Charge Avenge, to where if you've triggered Assault Avenge with a PA, Assault Charge will also get that damage bonus. So you can imagine, I know an enemy is about to attack, I charge Scythe. I get Photon Art Avenge, and now Assault Buster is also going to have Photon Art Avenge. And so basically, your two strongest PAs and skills now get a 50% bonus, and you can control it. You can also do the same thing with Javelin. If you know an enemy is about to hit you and you know they're not going to do another attack, let's say it's like one big hit and then they're doing some rest period or some down period, this is where Javelin comes in, because you would Photon Avenge Javelin. It's got Photon Art Avenge. Every hit is going to now do 50% more damage. So if you can hold it without taking damage as long as you want, wait for 10 PP, and then boom. So what you'll want to do with Javelin when you get into those situations is make sure you release it while you still have at least 10 PP, because then you can do Assault Buster. If you don't have 10 PP, you can't do Assault Buster. And so you'll notice in one of my combo videos, I actually did that, to where I Photon Art Avenged the Javelin and I held that button down until pretty much my PP was 10, and then I went into Assault Buster. That is going to be the most powerful combo, but of course it is very situational. The problem with Fatal Tornado is the only thing you can do is step dodge out of it. And so unless you know that you are going to be able to pull that off without taking hits, Scythe or Javelin are going to be your best options. And so really, once again, get used to using Assault Buster to finish your combos. You might see me do something like Wand Parry into Ripper, into Javelin, or excuse me, into Assault Buster, into Javelin, into Assault Buster, back into Parry. Wand Parry is great because there can be some specific timings where you want to charge Assault Buster, but you could get hit. Because remember, when you're charging with these attacks, you will not be parrying, you will not be blocking. Parry frames only come out after you release the Photon Art. So of course you could cut it short, but you lose damage. So in certain situations where it's like, I'm not going to be able to get that Assault Buster charge off, Wand Parry. And Wand Parry, especially with the Wand Parry skills, gives you a lot of damage. So sometimes you might want to sacrifice the Photon Avenge or the potential Photon Avenge for a Wand Parry and essentially recoup the damage while being safe. And also getting PP back. You have to remember, a Wand Parry counterattack with Wand Parry Edge gets you a fairly sizable amount of PP to allow you to go into things like Javelin and hold it for much longer. Another thing I want to call out is Assault Buster charges. It also has the parry frames when you release it. So if I were to release it once an enemy attacks, I will also get parry frames. So this is very, very good because you can do combos like so one of the things you'll sometimes see me do is I will do Ripper into Assault Buster, and I will release Assault Buster before the enemy attacks just to do that damage. And then I will follow up with a Wand Parry, because the Wand Parry damage will outweigh the 50% I get from Assault Buster. So you can play around with the timings and see what works best. Another great thing to do is this can be a great combination, even though I'm going into wand and partisan type skills, just because you're making sure you're defending yourselves and increasing your power when the enemy is attacking. And then when the enemy has downtime, you can do other abilities such as heavy hammer or even javelin, which will do more damage. So sometimes you want to figure out, hey, do I have enough PP? Maybe I'll go your options, or you can go depending on what your PP, depending on the situation. The other thing about the weapon action is Volk Raptor. Now, Volk Raptor is a little tricky. It's a little disappointing because it has a 60-second cooldown. Sometimes it's buggy and it doesn't work. And right now the damage is capped. But we'll see how things work out. Given the power of Assault Buster, Volk Raptor might just be that extra benefit, that extra gimme. So as you'll notice, I'm going to hold the weapon action. As you notice, I can continue to shoot it, and I will not get the 60-second cooldown unless it actually explodes. So if I'm attacking a target and I put Volk Raptor on it and it doesn't explode, I can reuse Volk Raptor. So even though it gets buggy at times, or sometimes when you apply it and you do damage, it doesn't explode, at least you don't lose it. One of the big combos I like to do with Volk Raptor is, let's say Ripper, or you can just do it kind of in of itself. So there's a lot of combinations that you can do. It depends on the situation, depends on what's going on. One of the things you do have to remember is the weapon action itself. Even though I can't see it because there's no enemies, it does have parry frames. So you could do Scythe, parry, oops, hold on. Scythe, this gets kind of tricky. Tap it, boom. Or if you just want to get it off. So that's something that you'll want to play around with. Generally speaking, great boss attacks is going to come from Scythe, Javelin, and weapon action. I usually don't use Fatal Tornado just because of that weakness of not really interacting well with the weapon action or even parry. You can only cancel it with a step dodge. It can be a great mobbing tool. So that's something to consider. But when you're doing boss encounters, you really want to have those fast, quick hits that you can manage Photon Art Avenge, you can manage Assault Buster, and go into other abilities such as your wand skills. So quickly, just as a showcase before I end this video, I actually use wand normals, wand parry, heavy hammer, wave hit from time to time, Scythe, Javelin, Assault Buster. And so that I just wanted to do a brief little tutorial and overview of the Partisans, what you want to think about if you're interested in using this weapon, how it works, things you want to consider, and also if you want a multi-weapon, understanding its strengths, understanding its weaknesses, and how you can pair together. Once again, with wand parry, gives me the ability to cancel when Assault Buster might not be ideal. And of course that wasn't Assault Buster, that was the Photon Art. I'm still toying around with the Photon Art. I generally opt for the wand Photon Art because I feel like that's just a better single target, but I would say the Partisan Photon Blast is probably more AoE. I need to look at the numbers to see if it does more damage. It's 281 frames, so it's pretty long, but that might be the same length as wand Photon Blast. Other than that, once again, I'm still learning Partisan, so, if things change, I'll let you all know. But hopefully this was helpful, and let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you all find with Partisan, different combinations. One of the things that I do think might also be helpful with Partisan is actually Talis weapon action. And so real quick, because I know this video is getting long, Talis weapon action is a PP regen tool. You throw it in the air and it just keeps shooting for about 18 seconds, giving PP back. So you can imagine if I multi-weapon with Partisan, throw this out into Javelin. So as I'm losing PP from Javelin, the Talis card is giving that PP back. Another also benefit of the Talis Wand, the Talis weapon action is that it has guard frames or parry. So if you're about to get a hit and you cast that, you will parry an attack. So you can imagine similar to Wand Parry. You throw that out, Javelin, you parry the attack, you can potentially control Photon Art Avenge, and you can go into your damage rotations. So once again, when I learn more and things of that nature, especially with Wand, I'll release more videos. But until next time, enjoy, have fun.